Hall. Thank you to Jared, who's been advancing these pictures. We'll get into the body of the program now. Thanks to everyone who joined early. I'm Jo Comerford. I'm the state senator for the 25 cities and towns of the Hampshire, Franklin, Worcester district. That's about 179,000 people. Some of you are on the Zoom with us this evening. Tonight's gathering is one part report back from me, some information from our team, followed by lots of questions from you. I am really glad to be with you all this evening and wishing you light and love during this holiday season, during these longest days of the year. As we start this evening, I want to acknowledge that tonight is the second night of Hanukkah. And even as we embrace the celebration, friends, we mourn the tragic murders of those gathered to celebrate Hanukkah on Bondi Beach in Australia. It is unspeakable, the tragedy, and the anti-Semitism that undergirds it. And we are also shaken here in Western Mass by the shootings at Brown University. There have been 400 mass shootings in the United States to date, more shootings than there are days of the year. That's mass shootings. So as I take a deep breath, I want to say that it's good to be with you and good to be together at such a time as this, as we find a way forward together amid such terrible national and international grief and strife. As I was saying to those who gathered early, there are instructions on how to access the live transcriptions and translated caption features in the chat. You just click on that little chat icon. It's a little thing that looks like a speech bubble at the bottom of your screen, and it's going to open a chat window. And soon, our communications and engagement director, Caitlin Billings, Caitlin is going to review the instructions verbally in a few minutes. I also really want to thank Lindsay and Robert, who have joined us this evening to provide ASL interpretation. They're going to be pinned and spotlighted throughout the evening. I also want to thank the constituents who called us to do better in terms of accessibility. So thank you. My team, my great team is here. They're monitoring the chat. They're going to catch your questions. Due to the volume of questions we received in advance, we may not be able to answer everyone's question live. I'm going to try to be a steamroller and get us through the content, so we have a lot of time on the back end. But if we don't answer your question, just reach out to my team. We're going to send you a follow-up email, and we'll get to every single one. Additionally, for anyone who is more comfortable engaging in Spanish, I'm grateful that Constituent Services Director Jessie Cooley is going to receive your questions written in the chat in Spanish, and we're going to facilitate getting you the answer both live and in written form. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jessie to offer a welcome in Spanish.
Gracias. Hola y bienvenidos a todos. Soy Jessie. Y si tienes alguna pregunta en español durante el evento hoy, por favor avísame en el chat. Y este evento está siendo transmitido en vivo y grabado para luego compartirlo con las personas que no pudieron asistir hoy. Si tienes problemas técnicos, envía un mensaje en el chat a hosts y co-hosts para pedir ayuda. Gracias.
Perfect. Thank you, Jessie. Remember, put your questions in the chat that says hosts or co-hosts, and the good folks who are here from our team will answer right away. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to the architect of this evening. God bless her for her intrepid nature and courage doing an online town hall with hundreds of people. I'm going to turn it over to Constituent and Communications and Constituent Engagement Director, Caitlin Billings, and I'm going to share my screen so that Caitlin can talk to you.
Thank you, Jo. Appreciate it. And it is great to be with you all this evening. Very glad that you could join us. And as Jo prepares to share her screen, I am just going to walk us through quickly on how to enable the live transcript and then translated captions. So the way to do this is to navigate to your Zoom meeting menu bar, which if you're using the application should be at the bottom of your screen. and locate the Show Captions button, as you can see here displayed on the slide. Next slide, please, Joe. Thank you. You will see a menu pops up, and here you are able to turn on your captions, and you are also able to turn on the translated captions. If you would like to turn on the translated captions, please move that black circle in that white gray oval over to turn those on. Next slide, please. You will then be prompted with a box that comes up in the middle of your screen where you can choose your caption language. You can select from the drop-down and then hit save in that box. Next slide, please. So once you hit save, the messages and the captions should begin to appear at the bottom of your Zoom window. They will be translated from the moment that you turn the translation on. They will not go back and translate anything that has already been said. To turn off the captions, just navigate right back to that Zoom menu bar and hit hide captions. That will lower them. They will not appear on your screen, but they will still be generated. Next slide, please. To increase the size of your captions or to change the color of your text, just go back to that same Show Captions or Hide Captions bar and hit the white upper arrow. That will allow you to click Caption Settings, and then from there, this menu that you see on your screen will pop up. You are able to change the font, the size, and the color of the font, and also where those captions are generating. Next slide, please. To view the full transcript of the meeting, so all of the captions in one, you just navigate right back over to that Show or Hide Captions button in your Zoom menu bar and click View Full Transcript. Next slide. And then we also have the wonderful Lindsay and Robert with us this evening, providing ASL interpretation services. If you would like to see them, you are able to turn that on. They are also pinned in the meeting itself. But if you would like to make them bigger, you are able to navigate again to your Zoom menu bar, hit Interpretation, which has the globe symbol, and then just click American Sign Language, ASL, and that will pop them up into a separate window where you can adjust the size of the window. Okay, and I think with that, I am very happy to turn it back over to Joe.
Thanks, Caitlin, and thanks everybody for that overview, and Robert and Lindsay. Okay, friends, here we go. We're off to the town hall proper by way of introducing our team. So we have a wonderful team. I like to think that they're the best in the State House, and many of them have been with us for years and years, including Jared Friedman, who's our chief of staff. He's a son of Leverett, and I like to say all the time that it's a good thing that Jared is young, because the job is punishing, and he is equal to it like really none other, as is our legislative director, Rachel Klein, who is new to us this year as a legislative director, having done constituent services before that, and Rachel is crushing it. And we will talk a little bit about the gains that she's made later on. And we are missing tonight Elena Cohen, who's our district director, and who just had a sweet baby. If you receive our newsletter, you'll know this. Ida Lou. I saw Ida Lou today, dropped off some food for Elena and her family, and she is beautiful. And Elena will be back, and we miss her. And we have here Caitlin Billings, who you've heard from. Caitlin's our communication and engagement director, and we are so grateful. It's a vast job, both getting information out and hearing from you. And we are really grateful that Caitlin does both with an equal measure of heart. Speaking of heart, Constituent Services Director Jessie Cooley is like a heart out loud. Jessie is doing incredible work now, sort of in both worlds, helping, of course, with constituent services and our interns, and then also rising, as we all do on this team, to the challenge of missing Elena. And Jessie is leading our district work as well, so that we don't miss a beat for the cities and towns we represent. And speaking of not missing a beat, we have been very grateful to bring on Lauren Howard as a legislative aide. And you wouldn't think that Lauren was new to this team because she picked it up like this. And you don't want to be a state agency that hasn't complied with a constituent's needs and have to face Lauren Howard. That's all I'll say about that. And of course, we're joined by all-star interns and fellows. So when you think about it, we magnify the work of this team by all of them. And we're very, very lucky to have so many young people want to come and work with us, both with Rachel in the legal realm and then all of us on the team. And this is our district. I think it sort of looks like an eagle. That's my current thinking. It used to look like a beautiful vase before redistricting, but you'll see it's got 5 communities in Hampshire County, 15 in Franklin, 5 in Worcester County. It's the entirety of the Connecticut River, and it almost circles the entirety of the Quabbin. I think it's the most beautiful district in all of Massachusetts. It certainly has the very, very best people. And I will say that I share this district with remarkable representatives. You saw a lot of their pictures because we're together often in our region, helping our people, serving our people. And so I'm very, very grateful for their partnership. Totally. We're going to say a lot of I's tonight. I will say 0 things happen, friends. 0 in the I. First of all, I need 200 colleagues to want to pass a bill of mine or get a piece of budget win over the line. And our region is a partnership, right? We link arms for the people of Western and North Central Massachusetts. And we also work with you. So I think you are the most active constituents in all of Massachusetts. And this is not empirical on my part, but I will say I have asked a lot of my colleagues in the Senate, how busy is your inbox? How do you hear from your constituents? And they're like, well, every now and again. And I say, oh my God, that is not the truth with my people. You are on the move for regional equity, for social justice, for racial justice. And I love it. We love it. And this is just a snapshot of the last year of new people coming in to our wider community. Our email list now is about 18,000. It was just a couple thousand when I took office. So that's the result of your unbelievable, sustained, growing, unparalleled action. And I'm going to say sort of a big thing now. I think government works in this time where so much is broken and government in our midst sometimes feels far away and fossilized. I believe it works, but the only thing that makes government work, and this is hard and I want you to take it in, is you. It's these dots making government work in the best interest of everybody. That's what our team signed up for. You are the ingredient. You're the special sauce. This is the embodiment of how you win, how we win together for our people. This crazy busy slide is how we spend our time. And every 2 years, if the voters send me back, I get new committees. And so that's the top left on your screen. So this for these 2 years, 25, 26, I'm on Ways and Means as the vice chair. I also got appointed to steering and policy. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Steering and policy for the Senate is what we call Response 2025. It's how we're meeting what's happening in Washington proactively, strategically, both with budget and with policy. I'm also the chair of the Joint Committee on Higher Education. I'm the Senate chair, which is apt because, of course, we have Greenfield Community College and UMass Amherst in the district, and so many of our constituents attend or work at the other colleges, both public and private, in the region, right? We are the knowledge corridor of the Commonwealth here. I'm a vice chair, Senate vice chair of the Joint Committee on Ag and Fisheries. Again, this is a note, not really a difficult thing to wonder why. I represent hundreds of farms throughout our region. This industry is important to us. I also, because you care about climate, I care about climate. I'm a Senate committee member on the Global Warming and Climate Change Committee. I also am on post-audit and oversight. I'm not going to narrate this whole thing because I think my team's head will explode because I'm taking too much time. However, I just want to point out that caucuses are what I sign up to do inside the building. I say, hey, I want to learn, or I want to align myself with these people. And then councils, task forces, and commissions, I get appointed to those. So we've just finished the 21st Century Ag Commission. I chaired that for the Senate. We have a report out. We're going to talk about what's coming. I was appointed, I asked to be appointed to the governor's anti-hunger task force. I did a similar task force during COVID. And I asked to be appointed to something called a Commission on Payments in Lieu of Taxes, or PILOT. We're going to talk about why pilot payments are important. And there's other commissions down there, but I won't go into it. I'm happy to answer any questions. So we're going to break our quick report back to you in 4 buckets. And let me say that in 2025-26, we have 2 tiers of work going in each of these, right? We have our normal constituent services, right? Where state agencies aren't quite able to help a constituent, for example. And then we have the reality of working with the federal government in 2025-26, where there is a great deal of confusion and hardship, and we are working both sides of this work. And we're going to talk to you about how each of these has 2 sides now to the work. So in constituent services, again, this is Lauren Howard and Jesse Cooley. During 2025, our team resolved 389 constituent cases. That's a lot for a state Senate office. And that means that, they get opened, and some are closed pretty quickly. Some take weeks, some takes months. And you can imagine these are what you see here, the RMV, or Department of Developmental Disabilities, or Department of Children and Families. We have lots of issues with Mass Save, and we have lots of issues right now with unemployment. These are our state partners, and we work with them on behalf of constituents. We are also really in the trenches around SNAP, around healthcare eligibility and costs, energy assistance and fuel costs, right, and affordability. In a constituent services context, we're also doing something with that on policy, which I'll explain. We're going to tackle higher ed affordability as financial aid changes roll in, and that's the OB3, is the federal bill that we're going to talk a lot about tonight, or some about. But really the bottom line here is we work for you. We'll always work for you. You should come to us. And in the notes from this evening, there's going to be ways for you to come to us. So let's get on to municipal and regional issues. Again, a 2-track thinking about that currently. So our regional work, really, this is just a little bit of a highlight of what we focus on. Again, we focus here because you say that it's important to focus here. This is everything on K-12 and higher education. This is mostly about state spending, but also about state policy. We care a lot about equity for the Quabbin region and the Connecticut River watershed. This is our lifeblood. We both want to protect it, but we also want fair recompense for this work, our stewardship. We work in the affordable housing and shelter space, a lot on transportation, and that's everything: RTAs, rail, microtransit, dirt roads, and cheers to Natalie Blay, who got Dirt Road Program over the line, Rep. Blay. We all care a lot about this. We think a lot about municipal health insurance. Many of you, in fact, 12,200 people in our region were affected by recent hikes of a particular entity, so we care a lot about that. And of course, line clearings from our utilities, municipal buildings, water, sewer, that's all the infrastructure, right? We have to care about infrastructure because that's where businesses come and families come and individuals come and jobs are created on all of that infrastructure. And we spend a lot of time here caring about the greening of the grid and how it happens. And that's everything from the siting, which we hope first is on the built environment, but also how we are doing that equitably for our families and individuals who want that on their homes. All right, so let's just talk for a second. I made this little graphic. It's going to be much less good than the ones that Caitlin made, but it works for me. So we've talked over the years together about regional inequities. And when I first got into office, People said, oh, Joe, people in Boston, they don't care. They don't want to work with us. We're never going to get our fair share. And I thought, no, this can't be the case. It's not the case. There are reasons for historic inequities. So what are these reasons? And contributing to vicious cycles, what I call vicious cycles of population decline and fiscal hardship, right? So these are 4 areas. They're not the only areas, but I'm going to talk to you about them quickly. So the top left are inequitable formulas. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that are there's spending that comes in to Western Massachusetts and North Central Massachusetts, and that might be Chapter 70 spending, which is the school money we get, or Chapter 90 spending, and it's not working for us. And I'm going to tell you some gains we've made on the next slide, but these are formulas. They have to be examined. Everything here that comes into municipalities, but also comes into entities like, for example, Mass Hire, which is an entity serving employers and workers in our region. We have to challenge every single formula, every single one, and figure out the assumptions in that formula and figure out where we're getting treated fairly or where we're not getting treated fairly. The other side of the pot, this competitive disadvantage for discretionary funds. We also get to apply in our municipalities, our nonprofits, for grant funding. And so we have to look at those grants, right? We have to say, hey, what is this grant value? How is it scored? Does it see our region? How hard is it to apply to this grant? Will we have the capacity if we have no paid staff, or if we have a half-time town administrator? Will we have the capacity to do that grant? We have to ask these hard questions of every single grant program. Down left, less access to services and opportunity. That's all the other funding coming in, like we talked about earlier, the RTA funding. Where is that funding coming in? Is it meeting both the needs and the opportunities of our region? And then the lower right is things like jobs or appointments to bodies that are not filled and or are not filled with our people from Western and North Central Massachusetts. And so what does that mean? That means that our voices are not central at the decision-making tables that are determining all those other 3. So what do we do about it? So together with our representative partners, with great colleagues in the Healy-Driscoll administration, and I want to say here that even as I talk about some concerns that Governor Healy, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, they want to govern 351 cities and towns, including the 25 in our Senate district. We're helping them understand how. We're aided in this by the very good Kristen Ellico, who's the governor's Western Mass director, who's our ally in this, of course, and I said before, the reps. So here's the ways out of the storm to increasing Western and North Central clout and well-being. That is what we are about. So first, on the top left, so those formulas that didn't work, we have to change them. And we're all about changing those formulas. Here's an example, and my team will jump in if I forget one, but Chapter 90, that's the road and bridge money. It went out in a way for years and years and years that disadvantaged Western Massachusetts. It went out and it said, in order to get this, we have to think about the number of people, the number of the amount of economic activity, and the miles. Well, you know what? We have the miles for sure, but we don't have an equitable amount of economic activity right now, and we sure as heck don't have the people out here. And so we were always getting shortchanged. Now that formula is going out, 1/3 of it fully, miles only. That means our cities and towns are getting a bolster of money for the first time. It's not enough, and it's certainly not enough to tackle deferred maintenance, but we're getting to see some ways out of the storm through formula changes like this. The other one, the changing the grant procedures, here's an example. The Municipal Vulnerabilities Program, this is a very important grant program for our cities and towns. It deals with climate resilience. The grant program itself didn't value what we have in Western Massachusetts. It wanted things that we couldn't provide. It was also super hard to do. So EEA, that's Energy and Environment, rethought the grant, and now it is there's a rural set aside. There's no local match, and the scoring algorithm that will make us more competitive understands the reality in rural communities. That's because the Healy-Driscoll administration heard us and heard our frustration that our communities were not accessing that. Down left, the services and opportunities. There's a lot in this category, including a new program like a it's a microtransit program that we were able to bring on, and that's an area where my team and I focused a great deal. And we focused on microtransit. Those grants are rolling out soon, and I am hoping that we are going to see the great work being done by the FRTA and PVTA and MRTA. I'm hoping that we will see that enshrined, because I often say, you can't run a big bus sometimes up into the hills of Leiden, but can you run a zippy little public Uber? You betcha you can. Jared's rubbing his face now. If you can see Jared, he's rubbing his face because I say this all the time. You can send a zippy little public Uber. You can do door-to-door service. You can take people into fixed route service. We know how to do this. Why? Because our team has secured 2 major earmarks, and we piloted this with the FRTA and FERCog up in Franklin County. Now the state has to take over. We also, in this services and opportunities bucket, we also have passed provisions in partnership with Rep. Blay to track every single affordable housing dollar coming to Western Massachusetts to make sure that it's going to be equitable to the rest of the state. So I could go on there, but I want you to know we're gaining some ground. We're not done, friends. But let me move over to the other side of this pot, and I'll say that because of good advocacy in the legal community, we learned of significant openings in the judiciary. We learned about something called the Judicial Nominating Committee. We went to Governor Healy. We said, Governor Healy, this can't happen. Our courts need to work, and we need voices from Western Mass on the Judicial Nominating Committee. That was a piece of work that has yielded incredible benefits from our region. And I'll just say one more story. The Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, which is a vital body for Western and North Central Massachusetts, didn't have anyone from Hampshire, Franklin, or Berkshire counties on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education while it was deciding really important policy that affects our districts. And so together with reps, we raised concerns, and now I'm happy to say there is one board member on Bessie, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. Should there be more than one? You betcha, and we will stay at it. So I'm going to go, but just imagine this collapsed slides as examples both of where we've been stuck for far too long and where we're gaining some traction with the Healy-Driscoll administration. And you can ask me anything you want about this. Okay, so we're going to get in now to legislation and engagement around that legislation. So first, I want to talk to you about rules change in the legislature. And you may think to yourself, Joe, why are you talking to me about that? Because as Jim McGovern says, who we love so much, rules are the least sexy, most important thing that someone like Jim or me would do. So for years, my team and I have approached rules like a pit bull. We've wanted more productivity, accountability, and transparency in the legislature. So have my Senate colleagues, and I'm very grateful for that. The Senate President, Karen Spilka, has wanted this too. And we've done some work in our team, like making our votes public and our testimony public, things like that on our website that Caitlin maintains. But we weren't doing systemic legislative reform. I am happy to say, because of great constituent advocacy here, friends, and here we have you to thank, and we have good people inside the legislature who wanted this too. Right now, because of rules that were enacted jointly in the start of the session, that's the 25-26 session, all committee votes are public for the entire legislature, and they're posted online. All testimony received in joint committees is made public. You can ask for that. Again, we would always give it to you. You can ask the legislature for this now. Bill summaries. This requires that any bill online, but also one coming to the floor, has a summary, right? You shouldn't have to be a lawyer to understand what those 3 words would do to your life. Sometimes bills are 3 words, sometimes they're 1 word, right? You should understand what that means. If we're changing what are called the Massachusetts general laws, you might not understand how to find out the import of that. You do now, and that's really important. We are sending bills directly to our own branches. That's useful because then the House and the Senate have more opportunity to work, as we've done this session so far. We're increasing the time of notice because it takes time to change your schedule, to understand whether or not you can either get to Boston or go in virtually. Everybody can go in virtually. This is just a little sidebar from me. If you want to testify, it is a very good idea. During COVID, Western Mass voices poured in to the State House because you didn't have to come in person, because we had virtual hearings, and things started changing because you showed up and said, hey, this doesn't work for Amherst. No, for Northampton. Warwick, Leiden, Greenfield, no. Or yes, we need this. And you're changing the way committees understand legislation. So please, 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 when we invite you or you see a bill that you want, please take the time to participate. Okay, now I'm back into the transparency thing. There's reporting deadlines that have been hastened, and we have a Senate audit which audits all state spending, that's posted publicly in a better location. It's been posted. It wasn't posted in as easy to find a location. It is now, and we've always had the Senate audit opportunity and mandate actually for the Senate and the House. Okay, so let me talk to you about the cycle of legislation. And why do I say this to you? Because there is nothing more powerful than an informed, engaged, and active electorate. Nothing, not the whole thing. And sometimes it's hard to imagine that you can influence Boston or you can influence Washington. I'll just stick to Boston now. Washington's very complicated. But you can. You have to just know when to act. So in the legislation, we're sort of going into the back half of the legislative session. Bills were filed in January. They went through a whole period of co-sponsorship. You told us what to co-sponsor, and thanks to you, we co-sponsored hundreds of bills. And I want to thank Rachel and Jared especially for that. And because we had to think about what those bills were, all these things. Then every bill gets a hearing. Every single bill gets a public hearing. There's committee decisions. And then Joint Rule 10 Day, which I mentioned, was just in December. So now these bills are flooding out, and they have time now, different than before when it would have been 2 months later, to make their way through other destination committees before coming to the floor in both chambers and being signed by the governor. So, roll up your sleeves, friends. It's a buckle up time because a lot of our bills made it out of committee. They were your bills, right? We file what you tell us to file almost exclusively. So now's the time. And many of them got favorable reports, right? Thanks to Rachel and Jared, we did excellent work in committee. And now it's time to have these bills make it further than ever before and pass. So let me just take a little detour here and say, while we're talking about all the bills we filed for you, we are also it's that split focus I talked about. I care a lot about the legislation, and I'm going to talk to you about that, but I'm also, in leadership of Response 2025, again, that's the Senate Steering and Policy, I am thinking about ways that we must, as a Commonwealth, I believe, proactively protect and defend our people. And that is because the federal government, it has launched, I don't think I have to tell many on this Zoom this evening, many incursions into the welfare of the people we hold dear in the Commonwealth. Now, you'll remember that some of you will remember that I wrote to you about all the work we did in 2021, both during the first Trump administration, also during the COVID pandemic, in similar fashions, right? You should expect states to be lines of defense. We're closer to our people. We know how to help. So we have passed a significant amount of policy. This is not an exhaustive list, friends. We passed a strengthened shield law. We passed one in 22. We had to update it for reproductive and gender affirming care. We passed a bill to make greater security provisions when individuals are going through legal name change as a result of many things, including gender affirming care. And that was a bill that we filed. We have ensured education protections for immigrant and special needs students. That is as the federal government actually cut those protections, cut them. We did that proactively, seeing that was coming. We also proactively said that our Department of Public Health, Dr. Robbie Goldstein, has control over vaccines, so that we are decoupling. You're going to hear me talk about that, decoupling from federal policy. We have made it possible for Massachusetts to no longer request a constitutional convention. Many states across the country are doing this. We didn't want to inadvertently be used. Some of these are, decades old requests. We didn't want it to inadvertently be used for harm. We've protected federal workers during a government shutdown. We increased penalties for impersonating a federal law enforcement officer, and that has everything to do with ICE concerns and what we were seeing, right? And so we're starting to pull some levers to protect immigrants in our communities. We have passed in the Senate a data privacy location shield bill. The House will consider that now. I know the reps in our district care about this a lot. We passed a book to prevent and create a structure to prevent more politically motivated book bans. That passed in the Senate. And we are, again, we know our friends in the House care about this deeply. And then I'm sure you're going to have questions. In fact, we've already gotten one from Karen on immigrant rights. So we're going to take that question at the end about the questions around what more we can do. And there's much more, friends. I'm going to just move us on, though. But imagine that I will take your questions, but also understand there's more we can do. I wanted to give you a sense of what we had done. And again, it's not exhaustive. So this is the halftime update. I have no right to a sports metaphor, so I did not write this, but we're at halftime, and we filed 69 bills. We've passed 3 into law, and those 3, one stops the confiscation of federal benefits from children in foster care. We got close on this one last session. We passed it into law this session. It's really a game changer, and I'm happy to answer more questions. It's the legal name change security bill. And as I said, we, I don't know if I said this earlier, we passed a dashboard. I did say this with Rep. Blay, that will track every single state dollar coming to Western and North Central Massachusetts, as well as around the Commonwealth. So people like me can go in and see if we're getting our fair share. We've passed 2 additional bills in the Senate, and that's a menstrual product ingredient labeling bill. I also have that with Rep. Blay. That says, we also passed a menstrual equity bill. It just wasn't mine. So it says we should have menstrual equity. We shouldn't have period poverty. And we should make sure the menstrual products that we use as menstruators are healthy. Right now, there's no labels on these products. And other states have done it, and we can do it too. We also codified a beautiful bill, which we passed last session, called the Blue Envelope Program, that came to us from constituents. It's an envelope that people who are living along the autism spectrum can use when talking with law enforcement. There's more on that. And we had a bill implemented by the governor. This is a pilot reform commission. Remember, I said I was appointed to this. So Rep. Blay and I have been banging on this formula. It's an example of a formula that really doesn't work for Western and North Central Massachusetts. We wanted it changed. We filed a bill. We worked with the Healy-Driscoll administration. They hastened that bill into law. Now both Natalie and I have been appointed, and we will serve. So we've got about 46 out so far. There's more to come. And then thanks to Rachel's amazing self, all of our bills from higher ed are out into the world. So on deck, this is in addition to Response 2025, and this is something you may want to talk to me about. The Mass Ready Act, that's an environmental bond bill. Boy, that's the whole business for us out here. We're gearing up to go big on Mass Ready. The Bright Act, that's a higher education bond bill. We actually helped with that. We were on a commission that figured out the paradigms. This will be a game changer for our public higher education infrastructure. We're going to tackle affordability and independence in energy, I hope. We're going for a farm bill and a food system bill that will both bolster food security, but also really help our farm communities. We must tackle healthcare costs, primary care, rural care, housing production and affordability, and of course, K-12 funding. That's just a little of what you can expect from us in the next months. All right, let's talk money. Congresswoman Barbara Lee, right? She says a budget is our values in numbers, right? That's Congresswoman Barbara Lee. There is really nowhere that values can hide. We spend what we care about. We spend on things that we care about. So we're right now, tomorrow, I'm headed to Boston. We're going to do this thing called a consensus revenue. We're gearing up for the fiscal year 27 budget. And tomorrow we're going to talk to smart people, and I'll ask them a lot of questions that we were talking about today in preparation about what kind of money can we expect. I'm interested, for example, about whether or not we're going to decouple on federal tax policy so that we won't lose some money that otherwise we wouldn't lose, right? So I'm interested in all these kinds of things. I love numbers. Many of you know I ran a federal budget research organization for years. It is like my love language. So agencies have been telling the governor what to spend on. We've been talking to agencies about what we hope they tell the governor. We've been telling the governor soon she's going to file her budget. And then there's going to be 8 Ways and Means hearings. As vice chair, and then before that, assistant vice chair, I get to host one in Western Mass. Many of you come. For the last years, it's been on education and local aid because those are so crushing. I don't know what it's going to be on this year. We'll have to work with Jared and figure it out. And those are amazing times for you to get involved, for you to tell me what questions you want to ask. Tell me what you like about the governor's budget and what you don't like. Remember, it's a crushing time in terms of federal revenue. This is going to be a hard budget, but we'll still spend money. So let's think about ways to spend it that are equitable. Our House partners go in April, we go in May. We squish it together in June, and I'll be on the conference committee as vice chair. And then, God willing, the governor signs the budget, and we begin fiscal year 27. Some of you may remember in fiscal year 26, when we saw the storm clouds aligning between when the governor filed her bill last January and when we sent it to her, we had cut about $800 million. That's not usual, friends, but we saw the SNAP cuts, we saw the Medicaid cuts, and then she vetoed another $130 million. So almost $1 billion short. There's a lot of sadness in that billion. We overrode some of those vetoes. So we're in this kind of, it's like budgeting, I say, on top of a volcano, right? There's nothing but tumult, and we try to do our best to find our way forward with smart people. So I just want to give you a sense, and then I think I'm going long, so I'm going to get out of here quickly and take your questions. in addition to annual budgets, we spend money, like we've spent fair share money on a fair share supplemental. And you can see the things that we spent on up top. We sent about $234 million this year, just recently, to what we called fiscally strained hospitals. These are hospitals that take a large amount of public payers. And in the closeout supplemental budget, which closes the books on fiscal year 25, right? So it's actually 3 budgets all at once. We're closing the book on last year, we're spending this year, and we're preparing for next year. So we did a lot. We restored stipends for low-income community college students. We sent more money into housing production as the federal government cut money. We sent a lot more money into an education account, especially as education spending is at risk at the federal government. As the federal government rolls back FEMA, Federal Emergency Management support for states, we leaned in and created a pot of $14 million. That's not enough, but it's something. It's based on a bill that Rep. Blay and I passed last year to set up our first ever disaster relief program in the state. We were one of 2 states that didn't have one. And Rep. Blay and I thought after the floods of 23, boy, it's high time we get it. So we've been working at that now. We funded it. We maintained some healthcare coverage. This is about reaching people who are at risk, this 10 million. And then with SNAP so under such scrutiny, we put in 10 million to help with constituent services and help DTA do a little bit of a better job so that it will continue to get federal spending. Let me just talk to you very briefly about the impact of federal policy changes and money. So let me just say that we saw immediately the DOGE impacts, and that's cuts to nonprofit grants, research farms, the layoffs in Western Massachusetts and North Central. That is still really having a pretty significant impact. The farms, for example, they were local farm to school programs, also climate resilience grants. Both were cut. The one big, I call it brutal bill, I cannot call it beautiful, OB3, we are seeing significant, we saw about 150,000 people after the million people that were, that risked losing SNAP during the shutdown. About 155 of our neighbors are no longer getting SNAP because of federal provisions. We are risking the sunset of Affordable Care Act subsidies. That's the health care that individuals you may buy on the exchange. There are new work requirements and eligibility restrictions for Medicaid, which is our Mass Health. And that is really coming into fuller view now. And it looks like about 300,000 of our neighbors will risk losing health insurance. As I said, there's higher ed financial aid cuts that we're worried about. There's much more funding for ICE in the federal budget. And as I said, there's a potential loss of $650 million in tax revenue. That is not the entirety, friends. That is just what we are seeing. And then there's all these executive actions. And they add, again, to the difficulty of this moment. Okay, this is how to get us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I'm going to start taking your questions with my heartfelt thanks for staying tuned and coming this evening. So I think Jared is going to help get the questions firing away.
That's great. And first, can I just say you did a great job, boss. Before we get into the questions, can you just go back to the pilot commission and just explain what are state-owned land pilot payments and how does it connect to municipalities being strapped for cash and potentially have it, and what did the governor do? Can you just talk a little bit about that? You're muted.
Thank you. It's 2025 and we've had Zoom forever. payment in lieu of taxes is what the state provides for what's called state-owned land in a city or town. And sometimes we think of pilots for things like an Air Force base. Out here where we live in Western and North Central Massachusetts, most of it is natural and working land. That's doing a lot of things. It's purifying water, it's sequestering carbon, it's providing outdoor biohabitat for wildlife. And right now, we are shortchanged in two specific ways. One is the pilot does not consider what we call ecosystem services, so the value of that stewardship for our Commonwealth. The second is that our land values are much less than Eastern Mass. And so there is a terrible insult to injury provision where we are actually disadvantaged because our land isn't growing as fast in value as like Nantucket, or I like to say the W's, Wayland, Winchester, Wellesley, all those guys, right? It's not growing as fast. And so we are disadvantaged. And why is this important? Because this land is not able to be taxed or developed. Now, many of you don't want to develop the land. I know that. This is not what I'm talking about, but you need the revenue to fund your first responders, your schools, your roads, your bridges, your clean water, you name it. And so we have to get it somewhere. And so pilot should come from the state, and that's what we're doing.
Perfect. Thank you. And you filed a bill, and then the governor issued an executive order setting up a special commission to make reforms to the state-owned land pilot formula. And you've been appointed to that commission, and we're looking forward to it getting underway.
Correct. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned a question from Karen. I'm going to read it, and then I'll read one other on the same topic. We would like to see something like the new Illinois law that restricted ICE and other DHS law enforcement activities near courthouses, schools, daycares, hospitals. Would Joe be willing to file something or promote the idea to Governor Healy for an executive order action? And then another question said, I'm particularly interested to hear where things stand with the Safe Communities Act and related legislation to support our immigrant neighbors, as well as Response 2025.
So Response 2025 is the Senate initiative. It's the steering and policy committee that the Senate president said, okay, you're acting for the Senate. You're going to figure out how to protect us and defend us in both with policy and with budget. So thanks for these questions, everybody. Let me say, in a bigger sense, do I think there's more that we can do to protect immigrants? Yes. Let me tell you what we did, what we've done, and I'm happy to tell you about what I think is what we should do. So first, we stood up something called a Immigrant Legal Defense Fund. This was back in the budget that's currently going, and that was for $5 million, and that's bringing in a lot of legal defense folks in the wider community. This is everything from CPCS to community legal aid and beyond to do immigrant legal defense paid for by the state. And that we didn't pass the provision itself, but we funded it. And that's important. And we've been keeping up with the rollout of this and, are very interested, I think, as a House and Senate. I'll just speak as a Senate in continuing that commitment. We've passed a law, as I said, ensuring an ongoing education supports for both immigrant and students with special needs. As the federal government pulls back, we passed that law criminalizing the impersonating of a federal officer. And then there are three big bills in this space. There's the Safe Communities Act, Dignity, Not Deportations, and that Legal Defense Fund. If you imagine the immigrant rights legal community working together, you're right. They are, and they're amazing. And here I'm talking about MIRA, the ACLU. Actually, Rep. Dom and I had a briefing with the ACLU and MIRA back in February, last February. where they came together and talked about their partnership. There are things in both of these bills that are important for us to know about. Things like stopping what are called 287G agreements, which are agreements between the federal government and local municipalities. I think that's important. I think we shouldn't have the ability to make those agreements. We have something called the Lund decision, which is out of the Supreme Judicial Court, that already prohibits state federal collusion, if you will, in these areas. But we could use to bring that down to the municipality, and I want to. And I think there's merit there. There is a interest in a provision in these bills that would say that if you're arrested, if an individual is arrested on a civil charge, that no questions about immigration status could actually happen. I think that's very, very smart, right? We shouldn't be asking about immigration status. There is also a late filed bill, which means it came in after January, that is an act to notify employees of an I-9 inspection, meaning the federal government would have to tell employers when it's coming to do an I-9 audit. That's important. And then there's these provisions that Karen was talking about, which actually are being vetted right now. And that's how do we protect students in schools, patients in hospitals? Where's our ability to offer safe harbor, safe haven? So, the question is, can we do more? The answer is yes. And that's going to be part of the work I imagine that Rachel and Jared and I will do in the coming months. I hope, with your advocacy.
Brilliant, thank you. And I would just respond to the question about opportunities to support the Safe Communities Act just by saying we will absolutely let you know anytime there's an opportunity for testimony or an opportunity for advocacy on any of these bills.
Absolutely. And folks should put your questions in the chat. I have a private message here asking if questions are being censored. God, I hope not. Jared's not censoring questions. So please ask your questions. There are hundreds of people on, so we're trying to do our best to get through them. And I took a little too long with the slides. But let it rip, Jared.
Okay. Susan asks for the status of the environmental bond bill and anything constituents can do to move it forward.
Well, actually, Susan, it's moved forward. It's come out of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. It's in the Senate right now. Actually, no, it's going to bonding first. It's going to bonding. It will be then in the Senate. We go first on this. It was filed in the Senate. Different than the Bright Act. If you're following that higher ed bond bill, that was filed in the House. The House went first. We catch it on the flip side in the new year. This will come to us first. And when I say that this is the main event, Rachel and Jared will agree with me that when we think about priorities, we have a whole bucket that is the environmental bond bill and where we hope to make gains on both funding for our district, but also policy that our people care about. And there'll be plenty to do, and we will tell you about it. Caitlin will help us tell you about it all.
Stephen asks about the status of the bill to create a municipal and public safety building authority. And seeing as the joint rule 10-day deadline just happened and you filed 80+ bills, this one was reported favorably just at the joint rule 10-day deadline.
Yeah, so the municipal building bill is actually, we call it the Bernardston bill or the Northfield bill or the Leiden bill. These are places that do not have the tax base to build a DPW building or a fire station, right? They can't do it. Or, in the case of New Salem, a town hall, right? So New Salem's town hall is closed. They're in another building. This is reprehensible, right? If we have a smaller ability to raise funds, we need the state to jump in, like we jumped in with MSBA, that's Mass School Building Authority, MBLC, Mass Board of Library Commissioners. We do that in these infrastructures. So there is something called a Municipal Empowerment Act, which is a bill filed by the governor, very smart bill, trying to help communities. I think that can slide right in there. That's our plan. We've got to get the bill to the floor. It's not a bill filed by us, but boy, you can imagine that our municipal building bill is going in for a landing in that big other bill. So we have an amendment strategy going with that.
Thank you. A constituent named Nort says one of the fundamental problems in today's politics is campaign financing. And Robert Reich has written about an initiative to exercise state control over corporations in a way that helps to overcome the Supreme Court's Citizens United decision. So does Joe know about this idea, and would Joe support such an initiative in Massachusetts?
Thank you for that question. Funny that this just started to erupt in a great way. Montana is one of the states that is doing this by ballot, I believe. So we also do things by ballot here in Massachusetts. Our ballot cycle is pretty far along. But yes, I do know about this. In fact, I have a meeting about it on Friday, along with other state legislators. We're talking to each other. Jared may not know that it's on the schedule, but it is. And we're talking about a number of different states' policies in this area. And I'm interested to learn more. I will say, for folks who don't know, in Massachusetts, we have pretty strict campaign spending laws and provisions, which actually I really support. And I'm happy to send anybody information about that. Do I think we can do more? You betcha. Jared, there's a question that I'm getting personally, and the question is, please elaborate on why BESS, B-E-S-S, is being forced into rural areas.
Yeah, sure. We got that one as well. Battery energy storage systems. So can you talk about the energy siting and permitting law
Thank you.
from last session?
So this is like, friends, I will say, and each of us have different expertise in our team. I will say that Jared, in the last 7 years, has become unbelievably expert in energy policy. And for that, I'm very glad. I see Rachel shaking her head. And we worked really hard on the bill that passed the Senate. And I will say that the Healy-Driscoll administration listened to us a great deal. But mostly, again, we were channeling you. But we weighed in really heavily in those regs, and then heavily with Chair Mike Barrett in the final bill to find a structure that would work for our region, that values natural and working lands, that also values green energy, that also doesn't have the capacity to go toe-to-toe with big multinational corporations looking to site solar and or batteries. And so in the bill that passed, we were heavy hitters. We passed the base bill was very different because of you, and then we passed a number of amendments. And we are seeing this through. I was just at UMass testifying in a solar siting regulation, battery storage regulation hearing, as they look to fine-tune these regs. Communities have, and they will have, significant opportunity to engage. In small communities, they're going to be able to engage by right, actually, right? That was one of the things we said. You don't have to petition. You are an engager, right by right. And in fact, we're going to pay for your technical assistance and your legal help. And we're going to do that. And that was part of what we wanted to get in there, so communities felt like they could engage in a way that made them understand, the opportunities and the costs of this and what they needed to do. I know our constituents are concerned. I am concerned too. We passed in that same bill a provision that the state had to cite solar on built environment first and set up a commission to have to have to show a pathway. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. To show a pathway on that, we engage deeply in that commission, and that will also influence where our EEA friends are going. And I will say, we're not done. We're not done. There's this, the bill is being rolled out in regs. There's something called a SMART program, which some of you may know about, that's also being rolled out. There's our built environment mandate, which is being rolled out. On top of that, we're doing all kinds of work at the state level on natural and working lands, and on farmland, which we go deep on, right? Protecting farmland and that ecosystem. So the good thing is we're in deep. The hard thing is it's hard to follow, and it's tumultuous, and we're doing it with far less money from the federal government now. So thank you for that question. I appreciate that question.
Thank you. We got one question that was pretty short from Elizabeth. You know, where did the money from the cuts go? So that's in reference to federal cuts. Elizabeth followed up saying, you know, federal money being spent on ICE, did that come from fuel assistance? And I just want to pair that briefly with another question about using the rainy day fund and how you're thinking about that amidst the federal cuts.
Yeah, so thank you, Elizabeth, for that question. Jared, thanks for that pair. So first of all, budgets are like big giant containers. They're fungible. So whatever the federal government puts in or takes out is just in a big pot. So there isn't a one-for-one trade-off. We can make those trade-offs in our heads and our hearts, but budget writers don't often do that. Again, we may be in agony about cuts to SNAP or cuts to the low-income home energy assistance program, anything like that at the federal level. Totally get it. Totally get it. In terms of the rainy day fund, this is an important question, and I'm glad to answer it. There is we're just north of $8 billion. Actually, no, I think we're close to 9 billion. It's 8.9 billion. Sorry, friends, in the rainy day fund. And that's a lot. It was 3 billion when COVID hit, and we've been building it since, because when COVID hit, 3 billion looked like Cupcakeville. It was nothing in the face of that global pandemic. And I think everybody who lived through that, myself included, understood what it meant to be hit in the gut and not have enough money at that time. And you'll remember there was a gap in the federal government's willingness to help us. And so for the beginnings of COVID, we were really on our own with testing and vaccines and things like that, and healthcare support for hospitals. So think about 8.9 billion. It sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. We have to see that compared to how much federal money comes in every single year, or it has, and we don't know exactly how it's going to happen now, every single year into the state. So every single year, roughly $16 billion, 16 billion is federal money of our roughly $61 billion budget. And so when I think about the rainy day fund, and I am sobered by this time, and I think there are absolute appropriate ways to engage the rainy day fund, we all have to sit actually with the reality that all of the potential federal cuts together, and that's the money coming into Massachusetts, not all of which is lost, but some is, and the money going into cities and towns, not all of which is lost, but some is, and the money coming to nonprofits, not all of which is lost, but some is, totals far more than the 16 billion, and then really is actually almost incalculable in terms of trying to add up. The governor's trying to do it in a very good way, both to show how much we've lost, how much our unbelievable attorney general is getting back through lawsuits. There's been 43 of them. So this is not answering your question directly. I do believe there are appropriate moments to tap the rainy day fund. I just want us to understand that we are we the enormity of what's at stake is not fillable by our rainy day fund. Can we avert some of the greatest harm? Yes, and hopefully we will make some good choices. Can we also try to raise additional revenue? I don't know if there's a revenue question. Hell yes, I think we can by things like decoupling from the federal policy or a tax provision, I think aptly called GILTY, which is about offshoring of profits, which many other states have passed, and that'll get us something in the neighborhood of $60 million. So not a windfall, but not nothing, as they say. So that was a long, winding answer to a couple of different questions, and I thank you for it. And the rainy day fund will become a discussion as to how best to do this. We have to also understand that our economy is slowing, and this is part of what we're wrestling with now.
Brilliant. Thank you. We've gotten two questions, one from a constituent named Kathleen, and I didn't see who sent the other one, about an act establishing a commission to study reparations in Massachusetts. You're a co-sponsor of this bill. It had a public hearing in the Judiciary Committee in late November. We can't see publicly online yet how the committee acted. So the question was, what's the status of it? But maybe you can talk about how people could advocate for it and
Sure.
why moving up Joint Rule 10 day or this deadline gives bills kind of a longer runway.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks, Kathleen. And I know who you are because you're an amazing advocate for this bill. And you're the reason I'm a co-sponsor of it. I will say there's reparations conversations happening in many communities, Amherst, Northampton, and elsewhere in the district. This is important, especially now. As Jared said, we can't see what happened to the bill right now because the clerk is dealing with thousands. About 6,500 bills are filed every year, every session, every 2 years. And so in December 3rd, the crush of the bills leaving committee just has caused a backlog. The good news is that it's not February when Joint Rule 10 used to be. So they're processing this through the holidays, and we will know much more in the new year. But this shouldn't stop anybody who wants to write testimony. If you haven't yet sent it in, you can still send it to the judiciary chairs. You can CC us, and we can make sure that when that bill comes out on the other side, and we hope it's out of committee, it could also be extended. Some committees are extending their bills, but for a very discrete amount of time. But we'll just make sure the right people get that testimony. And thank you for that question.
Thank you. Another question about environmental issues, so you can tell what's on people's mind. From William. I'm concerned that environmental protection and regulation does not seem to be a priority in the legislature and the executive branch. The governor has called for an all of the above approach for energy that includes gas expansion and possibly nuclear energy. Proposed regulation on plastics have gone nowhere. Environmental bills protect all of us, particularly people in poorer communities. What can be done to increase their priority?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Let me take the plastics in the bottle bill first. This has been a Senate priority. We were able to pass this last session. I hope we get to it again. I know people are
It
gearing up.
passed through the Senate, but it didn't
Passed
reach
through
the
the Senate.
governor's
Yeah,
desk.
didn't reach the governor's desk. Yes, thank you, Jared, for that clarification. So I hear this. We also have a bill on PFAS. I was just talking to the lead PFAS filer in the Senate today to talk about getting the PFAS bill out into the world. We have a piece of that conversation that Rachel's been leading on farms, which is really important. So I think we have to turn off the tap on PFAS. And then the affordability conversation, this is truly complex, truly complex. You should know that I filed a bill. It didn't make it. It's one of the bills that didn't make it over the line, to take out a provision that's in law around research of nuclear energy. I don't think there is a place for nuclear energy in 2025. I worry about the long-term consequences of that energy. I understand affordability. Oh God. And I know our people need relief. But I feel like we have to find that without subverting the will of the voters, and bringing that technology back online. Then there's more here, right? And I will say that the governor is endeavoring, I'm not speaking for Maura Healey, she certainly speaks for herself well, but she's endeavoring to find a way forward to deal with affordability while all this money for green energy has left the pipeline, through a bill that is no longer being rolled out, the Inflation Reduction Act. So it is tricky, so I will say, the legislature has to act on it. The Senate, has to have a say. And we are talking about that in the Senate, how to do energy policy in 2025-26, absent a federal partner, and how do we do it knowing that families can't pay more, and in fact they must pay less. I will just say, in this space, we file a bill that actually tries to curtail utilities from spending more than the neighboring states. We often spend more, or asking for higher rates rather than the neighboring states. Our utilities ask for higher rates, and so we want to bring them down to where other states are. That was not successful yet this session, and we will continue to press forward. I'll stop there. I hear you. I guess this is like the bottom line period for me, is I hear you, and it's a complicated space.
I would also say, Jo,
yeah,
that
Rach, jump in.
in terms of the part of the question on, how do we make people care? I do think, and Jo started the night talking about this, but constituent testimony, advocacy, it really does make a difference in the building. When legislation moves and a lot of people write in about it, their legislators pay attention. And so, we're working really hard on these issues, and it's in partnership with you all. And when you decide, to make your voices heard in the building. So, I just felt,
That's really
it
important.
can be easy to forget that, but from inside the building, it does make a difference.
It's totally true, Rach. And Western Mass constituents care about different things than Eastern Mass constituents. And so when you show up, you have a heartbeat, a point of view that is different. Our values are different here. I'm not going to say they're better, although God knows I think they are. But they're different than Eastern Mass. And that's why we need you to help us reach Eastern Mass.
Thank you both. And I told Sharon I would try to get this question in. There's a provision in the governor's bill that would repeal a law that was passed by the voters on the ballot having to do with setting up new nuclear power facilities. Can you just say, do you support that provision to repeal the voter passed law about allowing new nuclear power generation in the Commonwealth, or do you have concerns about it?
I do not support that provision.
All right.
I'm not the governor of the Commonwealth, right? So I have 179,000 constituents. Our governor, Maura Healey, has, millions, right? And she's grappling with lots of people who can't pay their energy bills. And so am I, right? My people can't either. And I believe me, I pace the floor at night about this. And I really do. Do I think we have to find another way forward? Because the risks of nuclear power are so great? Yes, I do. But you know, I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there. I think it came from a real heart place. I can't meet it. I can't meet it.
A constituent named Carrie asks, is Massachusetts looking to join California's preliminary talk about withholding tax revenue to the federal government if they continue refusing to fund our Commonwealth?
You know, I just had a meeting with constituents who I won't name because I don't know that they would want to be named, but constituents are talking about this in our district. I can't say whether or not Massachusetts would do this. I will say there are conversations happening. Subsequent to this meeting that I had with constituents, I did start to talk to Senate colleagues. Again, that's the power of constituents. And I will say, we just have to remember, friends, like, so our region has a pretty significant history with tax resistance, right? Some of the first tax resistance nationally happened here. And a state resisting is very different than an individual resisting. And we just have to remember that individually, we pay our individual income taxes to the federal government, which is why tax resistance has been an individual pursuit. So there's nothing, we used to have a colleague, Brian Rossman, many of you know Brian, who used to say there's like 0 things that are easy in policy. This is one of those things where, it sounds easy to do until you get under the hood, into the weeds, whatever metaphor you want to use. So do I think that states need to join together to be strong together, which is part of this conversation? Yes. And we are doing that with things like vaccine policies and other health policies. And the governor is making good alliances with governors. She's fighting hard to protect us and to make good alliances. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I'm just checking the time. A constituent named Rachel says, given the high degree of polarization on the national level, what is the senator's take on that in terms of state government? Can the senator cite any examples of bipartisan partnership on issues?
Oh, yeah. So friends, our legislature has room to grow in terms of our ability to serve our constituents. And I said that up front, with the slide on all of the House Senate rule changes, thanks to great advocacy. But I will say, one of the things that actually we do very well is bipartisanship. Here's a couple of examples. Rep. Lay and I have a number of farm bills together, and we are part of a food system caucus with Rep. Dom. And our best partner in this is Rep. Hannah Kane. She's a Republican. And our other best partner is Senator Bruce Tarr. He's the minority leader in the Senate. And we are together united for food security and land preservation and sustainability for farms and fisheries. And that is something that, knows no party, right? We're just people together, and we are in deep in this work together. And there is nothing that separates us here in terms of our commitment or our shared work, the labors of our teams. Similarly, in the Senate, that's bipartisan House Senate. In the Senate, Bruce Tarr cares as much about emergency management as I do. Like, we can stand up on the floor and talk about it together, which sometimes we do. And the 14 million that I talked about that the legislature was able to get to operationalize the bill that Natalie and Rep. Blais and I passed on disaster relief. Bruce Tarr, our minority leader, was in it, saying, no, we have to claw out that money. We can't pass what's called a closeout supplemental until we have funded that disaster relief program. That's my partner in the Senate in this, like my partner in the House, Rep. Blais. So we are strong together. Does that mean we see everything eye to eye? No. But, again, zero things pass, friends, unless 200 people basically say yes, which is why legislating can be, God help us, as slow as cold molasses dripping upside down, which is what someone told me once, which I think is still a very good way to describe it sometimes. But also it's an art of compromise. We have to find the common ground, the shared interests. We have to talk to each other about what life is like, for example, with Bruce in Gloucester. And he has to know what life is like for me in the Connecticut River Valley or around the Quabbin or in the North Quabbin or in Worcester County. And we have to tell each other the stories of our districts and open up hearts and minds. And that is how we build consensus for the passage of something that works for us here in our region. I went on a little, I opined a little, Jared.
I thought you did great. I think we probably have time for maybe two more. I'm gonna try to condense a number of questions that we've received from constituents Karen and Jenna and Erica, which have all focused on gender affirming care and how we can ensure that young people are safe and people have access, and that any care that's provided is evidence and science-based. So can you speak about your perspective on gender affirming care and
Sure.
how constituents can make sure that we're hearing their perspectives?
Sure. So first of all, constituents, I'll meet you anywhere to talk about this, right? That's Jesse and I are in the district, and we want to talk about this. I will say the legislature, if you were going to ask me like where we've done some of the strongest work initially, it was in reproductive care and gender affirming care. We have passed both pretty significant policies, and we've put a lot of money into this space where the federal government is retreating from it. We have said, no, we have to lean in, and we're not new in this space. I will say, we have invested in reproductive and gender affirming care before the current administration in Washington. And you can imagine that we're going to do that. But can we do more? Yes, which is why we're passing those suite of policies, like the policy that Rachel helped shepherd, which is now makes it much, much more secure to change your name. And this is, again, not only a gender affirming care provision, however, it came from GLAD Law, and the Mass Trans Political Coalition said, we don't want a digital record of name changes. We don't want engines to crawl and search and find us. You just have to make it a court proceeding that we can have be private. And the judiciary, the trial court, the clerks, the registers of probate, you name it. There's a lot of stakeholders in this space. I don't know how Rachel didn't lose her mind. Said, yes, we understand this is the moment. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for organizations like Translate Gender, Trans Health Northampton. I mean, we are very blessed by the commitment of Cooley Dickinson Hospital. I mean, you name it. I don't want to name entities because I'll leave some out, but in our space in Western and North Central Massachusetts, we have a lot of people who care deeply about this, and we're finding our way together.
Thank you. Maybe this will be the last question with thanks to everybody who has stuck with us for an hour and a half.
Let's take two more.
Okay. What is the status of Medicare for all and seeing as it and healthcare financing is not subject to Joint Rule 10, but so maybe add in how people can advocate for it.
Yeah, so the bill is before healthcare financing. That's the Joint Committee on Healthcare Financing. This is important. That's Chair Cindy Friedman on the Senate side, Chair John Lawn on the House side, both very good people. There is a huge Western Mass Medicare for All community. I think everybody knows, I'm a public supporter of the bill. And I will say, the crisis in our healthcare system, and this is everything from primary care to rural care to hospitals to community health centers, mental health, and then the whole continuum, and that's nursing home and elder care, is pretty significant. And the cuts to Medicaid are going to test this already broken system. And everyone is at risk. And you can imagine that the budget, like the last budget, like the supplemental budgets, will actually put a lot of resources there. Do I believe in a single payer? Yes, I do. Do I have conversations with colleagues in Boston about this? Yes, I do. And do I have conversations with providers about it? Yes, I do. So it's before healthcare financing now.
Thank you. And people are sending us pictures of their healthcare premiums,
Yeah.
what they were paying and what they're going to be paying. And
Right. And these are the tax subsidies from the OB3, the one big brutal bill that have been allowed to sunset by Congress, not Jim McGovern, not Elizabeth Warren, not Ed Markey. But they're still the subject of conversation in Washington. Our delegation is across the board is still pushing. We have to really help them push hard. The magnitude of the spending will be like a huge wave that will wash across us, and real people and families will be very hurt. And can we think through ways to soften that? People ask, why can't you do the subsidies? This isn't in the realm of money that we have available, while we also do SNAP cuts and Medicaid cuts and cuts to housing and shelter, you name it. So I don't want to end on a hard note, but this is hard, friends. So go ahead, Jared.
And you talked about the need to raise progressive revenue and to decouple from the federal tax code.
Sure.
I also did not want to end on a hard note, but
You can end on a hard note.
This may be the time. Let's see if you can lift us up here, boss. Our schools are struggling. It seems like every year there isn't enough money to fund local K through 12 schools and the rest of our town's priorities. So programs like theater and art are on the chopping block. What can we do about this?
Well, you know what? I was just talking to Secretary Tutwiler, Education Secretary, this afternoon with Jared about this very thing. So look, if you're going to take one action tonight, or maybe tomorrow, and we can put the governor's constituent, again, Kristen Ellico is like a goddess. We're going to put the governor's constituent services, Caitlin, if you can, in the follow-up email. Ask the governor to open Chapter 70. Chapter 70 is the money that we get for our schools. And because we have what's called declining enrollment, meaning we're losing population and we need to reverse that. And that's something, again, the delegation, not just me, but the delegation focus on. And because we're rural, the Chapter 70 formula isn't working for us. And it has to, and it can. It's not fossil. I mean, it is fossilized right now. We can bust it open through people power. I will say, on a hopeful note, the delegation, the Senate, the House worked to pass something called a target local contribution, which is, I can't even go there, Jared, your head is going to explode. But anyway, it's part of the Chapter 70. It's what localities actually have to give to the state. That, whereas Chapter 70 hasn't been opened in 10 years, that hasn't been opened in, wait for it, 18 years. 18 years it hasn't been opened. That's ridiculous. Things have changed. We're being shorted. That is open right now. So you could say two things and we'll give you little advocacy. You could say, Governor, open chapter 70 in H2. That's your next budget. You're going to file it in January. Don't keep us waiting. That's one. Number two, take seriously the opportunity to figure out the target local contribution for municipalities. We know your tax rates are too high. We know our kids deserve an excellent access to excellent public education. We know faculty and staff deserve good salaries. We know municipalities are trying to fund first responder services and clean water, right? We know the state has to help. So that's my rallying cry, like a crazy organizer. But this is what we have to do, friends. Again, it will not happen unless we kick up a major fuss. Major. And that's going to take everyone. So take one action tomorrow, and we'll send you a couple sentences. We'll send you a couple sentences and you can go to town. And if there's so many people on right now, you can take action. Can you imagine what it will look like in Boston when they hear from us in Western Mass? Again, I want to say the Healy Driscoll administration wants to govern 351 cities and towns. It has made it clear it's done numbers of good things, right? Both on its own and through good advocacy from the delegation and from you. Let's help them do more, right? That's our work. So with that, I want to thank again Caitlin, who has nerves of steel and brought you tonight. I want to thank our ASL interpreters for their kind work and their excellent work tonight. And I want to thank the rest of my team, Rachel, Jesse, Lauren, Jared. I want to send special love to Elena, who is home with Ida Lou. And I want to thank you all for joining. And thanks to all the Northampton, Hadley, and Greenfield for streaming this. It's the privilege of a lifetime to get to work for you. I love this job. It's the best and hardest job I've ever done. The best because I get to do the work with this unbelievable best team in the State House group of people. The hardest because there's not enough time and there's not enough gains for the people I love, and the people I love are you. So good night, everybody. Be well. We're going to get through this together. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your communities. Ask us for anything, and we will be there for it. Okay. Bye, friends.